Welcome to the Improviding Life podcast, where we explore how life can be more livable. This is Lloyd Crawford, your host. Hello. So I have been taking a social media content creating sabbatical, really with this idea of having like a sensory reset. And so as I've been exploring this, I'm on week 2, I believe. I was revisiting something that I had created as one of the resource sheets in the Body Bottle Breast Digest that I created, and that's a postpartum parental care support planner. And so I was revisiting the types of rest, and so I realized that this could be a really helpful, nuanced, fun episode to share out, right, of what types of rest there are, and then asking some of these juicy questions to ourselves about our relationship with rest. And what do we actually need to lean into to feel like our cup can even be filled up, right? And so I first want to share out with this brief story. I was with some of my new gal pals. We met in a online support group for entrepreneurs and coaches and whatnot. Hello, ladies. And so I was telling them how, I was doing an energy check on how I was feeling. And so I was saying, the energy of what it felt like in business right now was like a raccoon trying to patch up the holes in a boat with cotton candy, right? I don't know if you know this, but raccoons really they wash their food, right? And so that, I don't know if you've seen the videos, are so sad. I can relate to it. It's what I would call a food travesty, because food sadness is just a whole other level of sadness, where they go to wash, someone gives them cotton candy and they go to wash it and it dissolves, and there's this moment where they're looking at their little hands and like, what the fuck, where did it go? So I was doing that motion and saying that's sort of how I felt. And so from that sharing out of that moment, I was just like, oh, what not only what's having what senses, right, am I having a reset moment with, right, and going through each sense, how can looking at the types of rest support that and make that more tangible, help it be more practical or implementable rather, instead of feeling like I have to start from this place of imagination of, I have to figure out ways to have a sensory reset or to rest. So in no specific order, this is the order that they were just in on that resource sheet, that types of rest. There are 7 that I'm going to share. This does not mean that they're the only types, but we are going to go through. So number 1 is physical rest. This is, as it sounds, it's rest of the body, right? And so some of the ways that you can explore physical rest would be naps, forehead rubs, massages, deep breaths, shoulder and neck stretches. And I invite you to practice asking your body what type of physical rest it needs. My body often needs rest from being stationary, so that might actually look like movement, right? And so that's sort of a challenge from a mental perspective of, rest, that means doing nothing, but not always, right? And because my body is stationary for so long, rest actually means moving energy through, sometimes for me. The second type of rest is spiritual rest. And oftentimes, especially if you're newer to a spiritual practice or it's not something you had modeled to you, it can be something where you're trying super, super hard, or you feel totally disconnected. And sort of having a room for spiritual rest allows in what are some of my absolute favorite moments. I call them synclarities. It's a more interactive way of looking at synchronicities, right? And so spiritual rest might be a prayer practice or introspection, making wishes, connecting to ancestors, and meditation. Those are just some of those ideas, right? And so for me, spiritual rest often looks like realizing when I'm trying to force something really hard, taking the moment to pause and asking Spirit Squad, hey, can I get more specific guidance around X or Y? Or, hey, can I just have some energetic support in trying to no longer force all of the things? Can I have support actually going into the state of receiving or of being or resting? And this is often a practice of trust. Thirdly, there's mental rest. Especially if your human design, and if you have a defined head or ashna, like I have both of those defined, thoughts just exist all the time. It can feel good, it can feel bad, it can also, like, in theory, it's just neutral, they exist. But sometimes we need mental rest. So some of the ways that I experience mental rest is voicing my thoughts, especially as a mental projector. I'm here to soundboard as my decision making, so just talking it out, alleviating that mental pressure. Doing brain dumps. If you're listening, Sarah, hello. Sarah Steckler has amazing resources on an actual brain dump planner, so that way, if that's something new to you, it really helps you sort of get, at least in my words, you get your internal world outside of you, so that way you can start to relate with it, or not even relate with it, sometimes you just need it out, right? Just clear up some of that space. Also consuming less content. This is one in particular right now during my sabbatical from social media. Realizing too, the first week while I was I was enjoying the alleviation of pressure, where I wasn't feeling like I had to try to create content just to create content, because algorithms and words and all the things, right? But I realized I was still in the habit of going to Instagram and starting to scroll, and so I was able to realize part of this sabbatical is consuming less content, right? Not, acknowledging that I've been having what my friend Kelly calls the hungry ghost energy, right? I believe it's a Tibetan philosophy or practice. I don't know the word to use. Practice, framework, story about, the ghost that eats and eats and eats and is never satiated, right? And so for me, mental rest can be consuming less content. And something that my spirit squad has been telling me to do, especially during the last few card readings I've received or done in the past week, is to say no. Saying no to things that would add to your mental load. And also journaling in general, just whatever that looks like. I personally have what I call journey doodling, and it's where I draw out my Bittown beans, or my little characters, and I draw my internal world, I draw what is happening, what I'm feeling, and then put words to it. For me, that's the journaling version of the practice that I call face your feels, or face to feels, right? Of having my face lead. This is where I start drawing out landscapes, or what sort of internal situations it feels like I'm navigating, and then letting the words come. The fourth type of rest is emotional rest. So many of us, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this, we have several things in common. Perhaps one of them is that we give a lot, and giving does not have to be bad, but oftentimes we may not be receiving in replenishing ways, or maybe giving to people who have gotten really used to our giving and are not in a sort of energetically reciprocal relationship. Also, capitalism, patriarchy, and racism just suck ass, and they deplete us and expect a whole lot of shit from us, right? So there's a lot of emotional labor that is chronically happening, and really almost every intersectional identity and experience that you add to it is just another potential for uncompensated and unrestored emotional labor and depletion, right? And so some of the practices for me for emotional rest is making faces, actually, it's in movies often, but I'm someone who definitely is, when I was younger, did it a lot, where as soon as the person turns around, you make the face at them of what you really wish you could say, that's the sound of it, right? Where you're yes, I'll clean my room, and then when your parent leaves the room, you're well, fine, I'll clean my room, okay, and just letting yourself make those faces. Listening to music, and I really will ask my body, or this moment, be what music do I need want to listen to, instead of just opening up, whether that's Spotify or YouTube or whatever place that I'm going for music, and then just picking what seems to pop up first. I'll sort of ask, and usually that then someone will come up, or a playlist will come up, and that cues me into what type of emoting I might want to do, right? What emotions need to be expressed. How do I need to, because in human design terms, my solar plexus is fully open, which just means that I do not have any consistent energetic activation around my solar plexus, so my emotions can feel kind of clogged up until I'm engaging with energy outside of myself that allows me to emote in a different way. Crying is a great emotional rest, right? It's allowing that energy to move through. Grunting, therapy, chat with a pal, and also being in nature, right? It's again, each of those for me offers this energetic exchange, or this way to shift and be in a different space or place, so that way a molding becomes possible. Because the rest there in these instances that I'm seeking is rest from having to hold all the things. It can feel to me like a balloon that's overfilled and I want to pop so bad. Like I want to be in the balloon fight or the water balloon fight. Like I want to pop and alleviate that pressure. But it's just like I'm waiting for the pin to prick me, right? Like I'm squeezed in all these different shapes and I'm still not busting. And so, a rest for me in that point is like emotional release. It allows me to rest from having to hold all the weight of those energies in and all those emotions in. How can I rest from that effort of doing the emotional labor of holding the emotions? The fifth type of rest is social rest. And we're in this really unique time where there's still the second year of a global pandemic, so more life than ever has been virtual, and now more things are in person, but there's still then all of the realities of a pandemic to navigate. And so just social engagement in general has never looked this exact way. And also, we're at a place where a lot of us have access to different languaging of what we might need socially, and that doesn't necessarily mean the person that we're trying to express our needs to has the same social emotional awareness, intelligence, or skill set, right? So some types of social rest can be setting and holding boundaries, having alone time, and also having time with people who pour into you. And so in these instances, like rest can be rest from, especially with boundaries of doing all the things, right? Of having all the expectations happen, of you having to take care of everybody, of doing all the shit, like socially having the rest from some of your responsibilities and obligations. If you're parenting or caregiving for someone right now, that can look like saying, I literally need a whole ass hour to myself. So how can that become possible? Who can step in and support that? And making that, whether that's, perhaps a weekly time block, and setting that boundary and holding and saying like, this is non-negotiable time. Someone has to come in, and acknowledging that not all of us have access to that break too, and navigating that, and that feels really comparable or like sort of symbiotic with that alone time too. We have access through technology, for those of us who have the privileged access to having, internet, phone plans, whatever the metrics are, of being so interconnected. And also it's like, is there the alone time to just fucking be, right? To not have to be socially on. And then at the same time, and this sort of builds off of the, emotional rest part of having all that emotional labor. Can a type of rest be having time with people who pour into you? So instead of you being the social steward who's curating all the spaces and doing all the things, can there actually be time where the whole focus is for people to pour into you, for you to get your needs met? So that way you're resting from the role of doing and you're able to be in that actual sense of receiving. The sixth type of rest is sensory rest. And this is what started or was like the impetus for my sabbatical away from creating social media content, because I just was realizing I was so sensorially overwhelmed, like always looking at screens, sounds, like all the things, trying to force something to happen. And as being someone who's neurodivergent with ADHD, I was just, like already overstimulated, and then just the feeling the pressure, and not realizing that's what was happening of trying to create content. It was just turning the volume up on things that were already too loud, right? So some sensory rest options are dimming lights, cozy clothes. As a child, I absolutely hated seams. Like I played lacrosse in high school among, other extracurriculars, but it would be snowing at the beginning of the season and I would be out in shorts and a t-shirt because I can't run or like sweat or feel my body moving while I have long sleeves or pants on. The inseams of long sleeves or pants is just too aggressive for my system. So I would rather be absolutely freezing than having, and I'm someone who does not like being cold at all, than having the feeling or sensation of having those seams being rubbing on my skin. Right. Another sensory rest is like filling food, like actually something that fills you, satiates you, that gives you this sense of fulfillment as well. It's like, whoa, I'm so glad I ate that. To me is a sensory reset because I'm actually noticing my body, sort of like my hangriness change. I'm feeling that transition that happens after I eat something that's like just like one of those really juicy, supportive meals. Also, for me, no screens. I'd much rather have natural light in, which we don't get much of in Pittsburgh in the way our house was built back in like 1939. So bright lights and screens is really hard on me. So the whole, like scrolling for so long on my phone, trying to figure out content, like all of that was like that particular aspect was sensory overwhelm for me. And so then also looking at sounds, right? Are there soothing sounds or that support you? So for me, that can be nature sounds. Also, whenever Mercury laughs, I'm like, oh my God, you're such a cute baby, right? But also like the sound of laughter. So for me, sometimes I'll put on something like Bob's Burgers just because I know like when I'll laugh, but also like there's like when Linda laughs, she's like, ha! Like that part of laugh, like that to me is soothing, to just be acoustically around people having a good time. And or the feeling of someone being themselves is something that puts me in a rest state, right? Because I feel like I'm doing less figuring out and more of just being present in a way that has less performance attached to it. Then also for some, like certain scents might be soothing. I am less of a person who's like, oh, I want this certain scent to soothe me. I feel like I'm more scent neutral, except there's some scents that I'm like, absolutely get the fuck away from me. Like there's some scents my body is like a huge hell no to. And then most things I'm just like kind of neutral to. Except for like my form of uppers is like certain food scents, then I'm like totally jacked up and excited. But in terms of like what feels like rest or, getting to more of a baseline, scents are less my thing for that. But food scents will definitely hype me the fuck up. And now the 7th type of rest is creative rest. And that this was one I've been sitting with where I'm like, okay, I feel like I haven't been creatively expressing myself. So I feel like I need more creative time. And what I'm realizing is I need the rest from the pressure of thinking creativity has to be for someone else's consumption for some other purpose, that it has to be from this place of like expectation and like productivity and output, and that it's actually, creativity for me is actually about the moments of feeling alive and letting that be enough, and also letting that inspire what's happening next. So some forms of creative rest, especially from that pressure of thinking, oh, I have to be productive or this has to look a certain way to quote unquote be creative, it's like singing, dancing, cooking, playing games, painting, crafting, walking outside, doodling, and free writing. Really, like those are, I think, some of the more common things you might hear people thinking of as creative, but I, want to give you full encouragement and, permission in case you feel like you need permission to really sit and define with what creativity is for you. Like for someone, maybe like farting is creativity because you're literally creating something, with your body, like you do you, right? And also, like noticing or getting curious about how did I like to play and create as a child? And holding that tender space that someone probably told you, ew, we don't do that, be a big kid, whatever, fuck shit you were told by other adults, pretending that they weren't sad inside, or pretending that they knew all the things because they were expected to, right? Can we hold that playful space of, like, how do I actually want to create right now? And then exploring how that can be enough, right? How can that be just creative rest, and perhaps we're resting from this idea of performative creation, and actually feeling that like life-giving, regenerative energy. All right, so high quality acoustics. So those were the 7 types of rest. So to recap again: physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social, sensory, and creative. So when we're thinking about this, right, questions came up for me, and I want to share those out. The first question right off the bat was, which type or types of rest are you resisting the most? And for those of us who need to hear things twice to realize it's about us, right? Which types of rest are you resisting the most? For me, I was resisting physical rest in terms of moving my body. I was resisting that, right? I was like, but I'm tired. But like my body's literally like, oh, get the fuck up and you need to actually walk, right? And then also creative rest of like letting that pressure go and actually being like, has me feeling alive, and can it be enough to just have that moment? I don't have to do anything about it afterwards. It doesn't have to lead to anything, right? Just to like model, normalize it. Like I am actually sitting with these questions myself too. How and when can rest be a state of being rather than something you do? How and when can rest be a state of being rather than something you do? And our third question is, which type of rest do you need support with? Which type of rest do you need support with? I want to sit with that last question for a second and dig a little deeper with you all and play for a moment with this idea of someone needing support with resting. I am still breastfeeding. I'm very grateful that my body is allowing that to happen, of breastfeeding and like nursing Mercury. That position of nursing a baby is one that your body just like, I feel like I've shrank 2 or 3 inches. Like my husband is really, really tall, but I never thought he didn't feel at tall because I'm sort of tall, but the past week or two I've been looking at him like, whoa, you look so huge. And I know he hasn't grown any. I physically feel like my muscles have shifted, which it does happen, and I feel like I've shrunk, right? So I'm thinking about the fact that I have like 56 pillows set up in bed, so when I'm like with Maya, she's sleeping on me, I'm nursing her, like I'm allowing all those pillows to support me in this moment, so my body is resting while it's in this very like physical state of doing, right? My body is like feeding a human, and there's a lot of like activated muscles, there's a lot of effort there, but I'm also allowing the pillows to support me with rest, right? And also, the different, whether that's therapy, for example, I had therapy as one of the emotional types of rest, right? So when I'm in a therapy session, I'm allowing my therapist to support me with rest. So I want to, share out this very clear, so you don't have to try to put the pieces together yourself, just open-ended invitation where if you are unsure how to approach rest in one of these categories and you can just feel that something needs to shift, reach out to me, right? Like I have an offering called the Heard and Help Pipeline, and it really is, this moment where you're coming with your accurate location, how you are right in that moment. That's all you have to arrive with, and then we play in the space of me, asking, do you want to be heard, helped, or hyped, right? And then navigating what type of rest do you need and which areas, so essentially the first 2 questions, like where are you resisting it the most? And then, us playing together of how can it be something that becomes more accessible, right? Because I imagine sharing out an episode like this, can make you aware of something you weren't aware of before. So for me, it only seems like me doing my due diligence to have a way to be able to hold that space for you. So if you're listening to this and you're, identifying an area of rest and you're also feeling, I just don't know how to approach this. And even if you know how to approach it, I just want support with it. That's totally valid. Like I'm very grateful that I've gotten very comfortable with asking people about support. And lately I've been holding space for people in sessions who are, essentially having, really that creative rest of, like, how can I shift where I am in my business, or how can I reconnect to my sense of self amidst all of the life things happening? Like how can there be this emotional rest of me now realizing how disconnected from my emotions I have been, and really navigating all of these different like tendrils that are coming up, right? And, allowing room in their day, when they're coming to a session, it's like I'm just open and curious about what could happen. So if you're feeling like some sort of support is needed, you don't even have to know what support is needed. That's the whole point of a session, is for me to both intuitively receive these messages to send out to you, and also hear and help you sort of see the other side of what you're sharing out your experiences, and just give you, like the sort of role that I play that, I've gotten downloaded from sources, being an awareness activator. So in what you're sharing out, I'm able to show you a different way to look at it, to relate with it, not in a bypassing like, oh, silver lining, something's always a great way, but it's just like, oh, there's this other aspect that we could be tweaking or playing with, or seeing how this feels for you to try it on. And so it's like opening that up to, to reach out, and get that support, right? And so just sort of like foreshadowing, looking forward, forecasting. I don't know my terms today. Looking forward. I am going to be doing this series, and I'm not sure if it's going to be the very next thing that happens, but to put some teasers out, I'm going to be doing this series coming up with the elements of human design that I actually prioritize when supporting someone in creating or cultivating their body, spirit, mind relationship, right? It's not if you know human design, it's not the big three that most people like preface that you have to start looking at the human design energy with. I have an alternative way to look at it that's been supporting me for the past few years, and I've been supporting some of the people that I have been working with. So that is happening. I just want to like put out that teaser, dun dun dun, because I am excited about that as well. And so I believe I want to finish our time here to also give you one little teaser that the past couple days, I've gotten very clear messages. That's something that I have been creating. Actually, it came to me in a download like 3 years ago. As like Spirit Squad's like, hey ho, it's been time to share this out, so like fucking do it. And I'm like so super excited about it as I can't get my words out, and it's actually like making sense in terms of like I realize I'm not overthinking it. Just like the most easeful way to share it out has come through, and that will be out within the next week, and I'm so fucking excited. And the teaser that I want to share out is, it's like you take the energy of thanks, it has pockets, and mix it with Care Bear heart beams, right? I am so fucking stoked for it. And if you want the inside scoop on this and to know about it when it comes out first, join the Loracle Lounge, which is my really funky, fun, uplifting, empowering, and hype energy newsletter, right? So you get weekly Wonder Wednesday emails that give you different actionable ways to be noticing and supporting your energy and having just human-ass moments, and then a monthly Loracle that's giving you all the adulting energy that you'll be navigating and some ways to tap in based off of the Oracle card readings that I pull from Spirit Squad's messages for the month. So if you want to be the first group of people who are getting the inside scoop on that pocket power Care Bear dynamic fun offering. My mouth is getting so dry. Sorry, I did not bring my drink. I will have the link to, one, get the Clusterfuck Cheatsheet. If you have not gotten that, that is my freebie resource, right, about how to navigate your day and not let the clusterfuck moments take victory over your whole day, right? It's like, how can your day be decent even when, clusterfucks are happening? Get that resource, and by doing that, you can join the newsletter, sign up, and if you already have the Clusterfuck cheat sheet, guess what? You're already on the newsletter, and you already get all these deets. So I realize now that I am still going on, but as you can tell, I'm like pretty excited. So I will check in with you all soon. Like, review, or whatever you do to podcasts. Share this with someone who you either know from conversation or imagine, they're having a human experience and might need some rest. Share this episode with them. And I would also super love for you to share out your thoughts with these questions. What type of rest are you resisting most? And then maybe sharing out, how are you approaching this with a sense of being rather than doing? As always, have a razzle-dazzle day. And when that's not accessible, you put an F on front and have a frazzle-dazzle day.